Rachel got up and said that, was the money that they're pledging to build affordable housing and social housing is only going to build, they say, around 5,000 social homes. Now, we've got 1.3 million people on the social housing waiting list, 151,000 homeless kids, and after the Second World War, we were still able to build 126,000 council homes on average per year. So when I said that it doesn't even scrape the bottom of the barrel, it really doesn't. The government themselves have also identified housing and tackling the housing crisis. They've related it to growth and prosperity, which I absolutely think they're right about, which surprised me when I saw today's budget in relation to homelessness, social housing, and them pledging investment into those areas, because for me they are at the heart of the housing crisis. And I was expecting more today. So in terms of tackling the housing crisis and the social housing crisis, there's a number of issues, but funding is one of the biggest issues, because ultimately it's going to take investment. It's going to take building the homes that we need, both social housing and affordable housing. And the reason why I think it is a big issue, and I think it should lead in the paper and in the news tomorrow, is because housing affects the lives of every single one of us, whether we are a rough sleeper or whether we have a mortgage. All of us need shelter. With the government knowing this, and knowing this is a crisis that they would have to take on in order to fix things like healthcare and education, and I will elaborate. In terms of education, for example, a child, one of the 151,000 homeless kids in England, having to live in a hotel or live in poor quality temporary accommodation, then expected to also go to school and get a good quality level of education. That fundamentally is not going to happen, and often these kids are from disadvantaged backgrounds as it is, so it's setting them up for failure. But also we know, in terms of healthcare, that between 2022 and 2023, the NHS spent £1.4 billion looking after people living in poor quality accommodation, and 38 million on people who had become unwell as a result of living in homes with damp and mould. And many of those people are stuck in those homes simply because we do not have enough stock. And with this with the number of money being invested today, that simply isn't going to go far enough to tackle the crisis. In fact, it won't even scrape the bottom of the barrel. Often people say, well, how are we going to pay for this? How is it going to be afforded? And I would have hoped that was another sort of point that the Chancellor would have addressed, is housing benefit in particular, and the vast amounts of money we are spending on that on a yearly basis. Between 2021 and 2026, I think it's predicted we will spend over £70 billion on that alone. Yet last year, like I mentioned, we only built 700 social homes, which isn't helping the crisis. And that's not even taking into consideration the whole right to buy scheme, which I know they addressed today. But what if they were taking some of that money being spent on housing benefit and actually funding building the permanent solutions, which is investing in building social housing, building affordable housing, which so many people so desperately need. And you could say the same for temporary accommodation costs too, because we are hemorrhaging money on that alone, and it's not a permanent solution, it's a plaster fix. Well, and they've made that direct link between housing, growth and prosperity, and that's the areas that they should be looking at, because like you mentioned, in terms of education and kids not being able to get good quality level of education, similar happens with adults. I mean, people having to drop out of work, people becoming ill because of the conditions that they're having to live in, them becoming homeless and having to go on benefits, for example. In many cases, it's a cycle. So that economic case is, if they want to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, they have to be making sure people have access to a place that they can call home. And far too many people don't have that at the moment, and then we wonder why we're in such a state.